I was born in Philippines. I spent a lot of my summers growing up going to the Philippines, so I witnessed a lot of global inequity, global inequality firsthand. But when you're 5 years old and asking your parents questions like that, it can be very heartbreaking for them. So they tend to avoid the topic. And so growing up, I very much just relied on prayer. That's just the thing that kept me going. When I went to university, COVID happened, so I was very online for about a year and a half. And so I read a lot, and I followed a lot of movements, and I stayed very informed on what was happening in the world beyond Ireland, beyond the Philippines. And I started to connect how a lot of social and environmental issues weren't just standalone things. I didn't know how to express it to the people around me, but there was this growing sense that I needed to do more. I didn't know how to go about that because that's not how my parents never really exposed me to avenues beyond charity. And I studied psychology, so I learned more about mental health, and I think we spoke a lot about mental health in terms of mental disorders, mental distress just happens to a person, when that's not right at all. It's actually a social issue. Your access to healthcare, the supports you have available to you, being able to have a good commuter system to get to university every single day is what leads to your well-being and that kind of quality. So I think it was fantastic when she said earlier about well-being being at the center, because it's just a connection for everything, right? And when I got involved with the Students' Union, because I wanted to make changes in terms of commuters and blended learning and stuff like that, I met other students who were taking part in STAND programs, and that's how I came across the Global Issues course. And my experience was it kind of answered a lot of growing anxiety I had about my future and the state of the world. Because when you're coming out of COVID and you're constantly exposed to things like Black History Month, and I have a lot of friends who are BIPOC, you just don't really know what you can do. And Global Issues course was a series of topics 2 years ago, and we talked about what you could do on a micro level, but also on a macro level. And I never thought about young people being at the center of driving change before. When we talk about the far right, we often kind of jump to aggression, calling out racism, but how do you express to your white peers that actually you need to not just block and disengage, you need to have conversations with them? It's those kinds of guidance towards micro-level interactions that kind of made me think, actually, we as individual citizens have something that we can do. And after the Global Issues course, I just felt like I had the vocabulary for the first time to discuss all of the interconnected nature of these global issues. And it provided an immense amount of relief. As part of that, I also took part in a book club, not by STAND, but because of somebody else in that program. So the learning has been continuous for me. And I found a community in the other young people that I met through that program. And it provided me a lot of hope, because we don't often let ourselves experience optimism, allow ourselves to think, actually, this is something that is achievable, right? And then after that, I joined the Ideas Collective, and the idea behind that was it equipped young people with the skills for social entrepreneurship. And so coming out of that, I not only learned how to speak publicly, like I haven't ran out the room yet, but I also just got to talk about what I said earlier, mental health not just happening to a person, mental disorders, mental distress not just happening to a person, but viewing it from a social perspective deeply entangled with our relationship with the earth as well and the environment. Have you ever considered what Indigenous practice in Ireland is? All of these things are interconnected. And to have that community, to be constantly surrounded then with other young people and have that guidance, I think just restored hope for me. And I think global citizenship education is important not only for young people, but for people of all ages to reconnect with that sense of hope and optimism for the future that we often lose with social media and bearing witness to a lot of atrocities happening in the world.